Is it time for the New Orleans Saints to move on from Taysom Hill? Ladies and gentlemen, the backdrop, the Hunt Palmer Show. So this week, there's been a ton of news around the Saints regarding Taysom Hill and regarding the Saints' plans for Taysom Hill. What are they going to do with a fan favorite, right? The Saints have some tough decisions to make moving forward, and we all know which direction they're heading. They're in the direction of getting younger. They're in the direction of saving money. They're in the direction of retooling and planning for the future. Now, unfortunately, that doesn't really line up with a 34-year-old expensive player coming off of a serious injury. Context, Taysom Hill is entering the last year of his deal. Okay. If the Saints cut him, June 1 designation, blah, 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 they would save $10 million. Now, the other option is to restructure him. Now, if you restructure him, and you can't restructure every player, so you use up a restructuring in order to either give more money or more years or whatever to an injured 35-year-old pseudo running back. That seems unlikely. Okay? It seems, if you weigh those two options, it seems like the option that makes more sense is to cut him and to save the money, and it is what it is. Now, let me make this clear. I love Taysom. Taysom's one of my favorite players. Taysom is awesome. Taysom is great, and the Saints are better with Taysom on the roster as a fan, as everything else. I wish Taysom was 22, and I wish he had 10 more years in the league, but he doesn't. And sometimes you got to do what you got to do, and sometimes tough decisions will be made, and this seems like one of them for the Saints.
All right, let's talk a little bit of Saints here. Kellen Moore is going to meet with the media tomorrow at 1:30, so there'll be some great quotes coming out on that, and then I would imagine he'll be pretty quick to the road to get some staff members put into place, get this train leaving the station. But part of this is now looking at the current roster and determining how you want to operate this thing in the short term. And some of those decisions may have some sentimental impact on Saints fans. And some of them will be Saints decisions and some of them will be player decisions. But one of them is going to come from Taysom Hill. And Taysom Hill, one, got to the NFL very quote-unquote late, because when you go on your mission, you play at BYU, you get into the league into your mid to late 20s, unlike a lot of folks that show up in the league at 21, 22. So while Taysom Hill hasn't been around for as long as some folks at that point, you're talking about a guy who's now climbing into his mid-30s. And the question is, does he want to rehab from this ACL, which he suffered late in the season?
Yeah, he suffered in December, so he's going to miss a chunk of the upcoming year, which, again, if you're the Saints, it's like, well, that's not really a good situation to restructure. But if he's not going to be playing and you can save the money anyways, why wouldn't you save the money?
You'd have to come back probably mid-season for a team that doesn't have phenomenal prospects on next season and go put your body through that again. And like, Taysom Hill can only play one way. Taysom Hill can only play as a battering ram who's physical and seeks out contact and is a guy that blocks at the end of the line of scrimmage and takes hits in the running game. And like, he's only got one gear, and we've seen it, and it's been an awesome gear for New Orleans. But what do you do with Taysom Hill? And the question is, does he want to play? If not, your decision is made for you, because you just put him on the veteran minimum and facilitate that retirement like you did with Ryan Ramczyk.
I haven't really heard anything about him retiring. I mean, this is news to me. I guess it could be an option, but I haven't heard anything in the way of him retiring.
If he does want to play, you've got to determine what you want to do. And the Saints can get $10 million in relief in 2025 if you release Taysom Hill and move on. The dead cap hit would be about $8 million for this year, and then in 2026, about $9.5 million, which sounds awful, but every team's carrying some dead money, and the Saints are going to enter a spot here where there's going to be some dead money attached to what they're doing with some of these aging players on the roster. But in my estimation, without the sentimental attachment that a lot of Saints fans have to Taysom Hill for great reason.
Let me say this about the sentimental attachment. Remember, and this is one of those like double-edged swords, we want a fresh start. We want outside voices. We want a front office or a coaching staff or whatever to make decisions based on what's better for the Saints moving forward, not based on things in the past. All right. What do we always say? We don't want retreads. We don't want, just run it back. We don't want this. Unfortunately, sometimes these are the decisions that come with that. And you may lose a sentimental player. Because if you're Kellen Moore, if you're whoever, Taysom Hill isn't the guy who, he ran for blank yards 5 years ago. Or he's not the guy who broke the tackle on the 2-yard line to score on 4th down 2 years ago. Or he's not the guy who blocked a punt 3 years ago or whatever. He's not that. He's a 35-year-old coming off of an ACL injury with a possible $10 million in relief for a team that you're trying to set up for future success. That's what he is. So these are the hard crossroads, but as much as you hate to say it, it might be one of those decisions that has to be made.
I don't think Taysom Hill is going to be on the next good Saints team. I don't think he's got a role on the next good Saints
team. He's 35.
Team. Because I don't think he's going to play much this year. I don't think the Saints are going to be very good this coming year. And I don't see him having...
Yeah, I mean, again, guys, he's going into the last year of his contract. So if you're like, well, this year he can rehab, next year in 2 seasons he can play. It's like, well, then you'd have to re-sign him. You have to give him another contract. And how insane does that sound? A team that needs to get younger, needs to get cheaper, and you're talking about offering a new contract, an extension to a 35-year-old, at that point 36-year-old, coming off a significant knee injury.
Having a big role on a 2026 team with his current age. I mean, you're talking about a guy who is 34, and you're talking about a guy at 36 playing that style of football. I just don't see it. I mean, am I crazy? I just don't see it.
No.
So, to me, while it's unpleasant, part of this has got to be unpleasant. And you're looking at guys like Taysom Hill, like Ryan Ramczyk.
Look, we talked about it. I've said this a million times. I've used this metaphor, and I'll keep using it. When I go downtown, restaurants, bars, whatever, it's all the same pictures. It's all the same plaques. It's all the same newspaper. We are shifting. We're not going to. We are currently shifting from that era of Jimmy Graham and Marcus Colston and Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram and Drew Brees and Lance Moore and Michael Thomas and Demario Davis and Marshawn Lattimore and Tyrann Mathieu and Cam Jordan. We are going from that era and those players and those moments and Taysom Hill to the next group of moments and players and all of that. And part of that is sad. It's always sad to see your favorite players or the guys who you root for or whatever. It's always sad to see them either towards the end of their career or when they get traded. I don't know if y'all remember a movie, Little Big League, one of my favorite sports movies of all time. But the owner is like a 12-year-old boy. You got to stick with me here. The owner is or the GM, whatever, is like a 12-year-old boy, a baseball prodigy. And one of the first things he has to do is trade his favorite player. And it's like, it's a very heartbreaking moment. But that's kind of where we're at. We're over the next couple of years, Derek Carr, Alvin Kamara. I mean, Kamara's still playing at a super high level, but still, you get my drift here. Ryan Ramczyk, who will be retiring. Cam Jordan, Demario Davis, Tyrann Mathieu, Marshawn Lattimore's already traded. Taysom Hill. Those guys are going to be off the team. They're going to be off the team either due to release, trades, their own, retirements or whatever. And yeah, it is at the same time sad and exciting. All right. So the hope is that finding the next group happens quickly. The hope is this draft class, the next draft class, the next draft class, we keep bringing in new talent and new players and the new names and the new jerseys that you'll see in the stands. Now, there's a chance We could not. There's a chance that you miss on draft classes, and then it goes, just bursts into flames. But hopefully, we are on the precipice of the new group of stars,
like Cam Jordan, like Tyrann Mathieu, eventually Alvin Kamara, that you're gonna look at and see, like, how do we want to handle this money? You've made your decision with Kamara, and Tyrann says he wants to play 2 more years, and we'll see. But Ramchik's made that decision for you. DeMario hasn't slowed down just yet. So I'm thinking at this point, when I look at these aging Saints, the only one that I'm looking at going, okay, this may be a separation point, if you're not including Derek Carr, who is 33, but is not really, there's not much sentimental there. There's a lot of sentimental value in all the rest of those guys. I think it's time to move on from Taysom Hill. And this is coming from a guy that said don't pay Kamara and don't extend him. And it's coming out of that same mouth, but I'm doing it because I think that you've got to start this process and start to free up a little bit of money and start to see if you can't take some chances on some younger players that are cheaper. And Taysom Hill is old and expensive.
And hurt.
So that's 3 strikes.
Yeah.
And then when you add that to where the state of the roster is right now, it just doesn't fit. This isn't a fit.
Yeah.
You love Taysom Hill. You got the jerseys. You love the effort. You love the tenacity. You love the teammate. You love the investment that he's made in the city and being a Saint, the roles he's taken on, whether it's been starting quarterback in Breeze's stead as an injury, whether it's been tight end, whether it's been punt protector, like whatever, he's just done it. And I love that, and Saints fans love that. But the time for trying to hold on to all that is gone. And I'm going to play this parallel that very few of you will understand initially, but I'm hopeful that it gets the message across. Like, I was emotional when the Cubs moved on from the core that won them a World Series. When they traded
Anthony
Rizzo and traded Chris Bryant and traded Javi Baez and let John Lester walk and let Wilson Contreras walk and all these guys that meant so much to the greatest run in the history of the organization, it was painful for me as someone who invested emotionally in that team. But those guys failed elsewhere with massive contracts. And the Cubs got out from under it, and they got younger, and they got cheaper, and they got one of the best farm systems in baseball, and they were able to go out and spend some money on Dansby Swanson and spend some money on Seiya Suzuki. And y'all may not even know who those 2 players are. But the point is,
damn. You don't think we know who Dansby Swanson is? What's going on here?
There's a part of you as a fan that hates.
It's Mallory Swanson's husband.
Hates to see guys that you have invested so many hours and so much emotion with, see him move on. But
it's interesting, just human, just from a psychological standpoint. Because if you asked 100 Saints fans if they want, if we should move forward, if we should move forward, be new, be whatever, they would say yes. But simultaneously, there is something that pulls you to the past. And there is something that pulls you to what you've been accustomed to and the players you know and the players you like and the players you root for. And, it is a unique experience as a fan. Because I don't think anybody's like, no, we need to just keep doing it how we've done it. No one wants that. But when it comes time to be like, okay, well, that means releasing blank player or trading blank player or whatever, it's like, damn, it really hits you that, damn, we really are moving forward.
But ultimately, it can be the right thing. And there's no guarantee that the Saints are going to take these savings and reallocate them into the draft and into free agency and hit and immediately get back to the top of the division.
It's kind of like, this is not a 1-for-1 because it's not how this played out, but it's kind of like you're cutting Deuce to hopefully find Kamara. And it's like, before you find the Kamara, cutting Deuce is like, he's our guy. He is the guy. He's the face of the franchise besides me. He is who we're wearing jerseys. He's who's on commercials. He's who's on the billboard, right? And the hope is you find the Kamara, who then becomes an even better version of Deuce. And I think, well, I mean, a totally different version of Deuce, but just better in general. And I think if you look back now, Alvin is for sure the better player in Saints lore and Saints whatever. But before it comes to fruition, and before you see it, before you find the new Taysom Hill, or before you see the new roster, or before you see the new iteration of the New Orleans Saints, it can be very difficult to leave all that behind.
The Cubs have not even played in a playoff game since they did all that. Now, they're over a 70% chance to win the division this year, but there's no guarantee that it works, and it sucks in the moment. But that's the part of this that the Saints have to start with now, because there was the optimism of, let's get the new coach. And that optimism was invested into the search. Well, the search is over, and now the work begins. And the work is cleaning up the current roster and pumping it with new young talent.
Okay, pause.
And I think one of the decisions that has to be made, whether it's Taysom making it or the Saints, is with Taysom Hill. And with his injury situation and his cap number and some savings that you can create this year, and maybe what that'll allow you to do with some extra cash or just to get under the salary cap, for crying out loud, I'm good with it. And so I think that's a tough thing to swallow for Saints fans.
Pause.
But that's part of what this process is going to look like over the next 5 months and then over the next 15 months.
Yeah.
When you go through this next season, go through another draft, another free agent cycle, and some of those other guys that I had listed start to come off the books slowly but surely. Hey, it's on. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, man. I mean, look, it's 100%. Like, it's a tough, unique time as a Saints fan. And there's some players like Cam Jordan. Love Cam Jordan. One of my favorite Saints ever. See him all the time. See him at Pelicans games. Obviously, he's very vocal in front of the media. It's hard to even imagine the New Orleans Saints without Cam Jordan, right? But soon, that is going to be a reality. Just because of either his age or his career or whatever. It's hard to imagine the Saints without Taysom Hill. It's hard to imagine the Saints without Alvin Kamara. It's hard to imagine the Saints without a blank player. But eventually that happens. And especially in the situation that we are in with Kellen Moore coming, as the head coach, 36 years old, rebuilding this thing from the ground up, it's going to happen. And it is absolutely okay. It's absolutely okay to not be happy in the Taysom Hill news while simultaneously understanding the decision, which I think is where I'm at. It's like, yeah, I want Taysom on the team, but I absolutely understand, like, he's in the last year of his contract. You can save $10 million. The guy's not going to play that much. He's hurt. He's old. You're not going to give him a new deal. So all that makes perfect sense. So tough though, but the hope is that they can move forward and build something, and they can reinvest what they're saving and replenish the roster. That's the hope. All right. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.